The White Witch, a story from Okinawa. In the early 80s, I lived in Okinawa, Japan, a place that shaped me in ways I'll never forget. My father, a military man, believed that living abroad would help my brother and me become better people. He was right. We lived in a small, traditional Japanese neighborhood far off the base, perched atop a steep hill. The house overlooked a large zoo on one side and a cemetery on the other. The view was breathtaking but eerie. Between our house and the zoo was dense jungle, thick like something straight out of an Indiana Jones movie. And yes, the local kids and I would tromp through it, ignoring the warnings about poisonous snakes and unexploded World War II mines. We were the only American family in that cul-de-sac, surrounded by Japanese families. Despite the language barrier, we formed bonds with the children, and it was a beautiful experience. One neighbor, Mama-san, was especially kind to us. She would invite us over to help her in her garden, offering us green tea and homemade chocolate banana cookies. We loved her, and she had a warmth that made you feel welcome. But there was something unsettling about her house, something that always stayed in the back of my mind. It overlooked the cemetery, and that cemetery was unlike any I had seen before. In Okinawa, burials aren't as common as in other parts of the world. Instead, above-ground crypts are built, large stone structures placed on hillsides. The crypts were polished and gleamed in the sunlight, but they held a history that was haunting. Below Mama-san's house, the cemetery stretched out across the valley, the crypts arranged in a chaotic but beautiful pattern. Old stone paths wound through them, cracked and worn with age, making it a place that was both beautiful and unsettling. One evening, Mama-san invited me over alone. She said she had something important to show me, something that was meant only for me as the older brother. I felt a sense of pride and curiosity as I agreed to visit. She led me to the back of her garden, where she sat me on an old wooden bench carved with fishermen and warriors. She had a story to tell, and it would change everything. She disappeared for a few minutes and returned with a tray of hot green tea and sweet rice cakes. As we sipped the tea, she spoke. Her words were slow, deliberate, as if each one carried weight. She told me that she had seen me and the other kids daring each other to walk the dangerous path through the cemetery at night. It was a challenge, one that many had attempted but none had finished without fear. The cemetery at night was a place of mystery, and Mama-san wanted to explain why it was best to avoid it. She told me a story from long ago, one that had been passed down through the generations. During the war, the people of Okinawa were filled with fear. Americans were seen as devils, monsters who would torture and kill for no reason. The fear was so strong that many innocent people believed it, and in their terror, some chose to end their lives, rather than face the horrors they believed awaited them. One of those people was a young woman, a mother who, along with her 2 children, threw herself off a cliff to escape the brutality of war, but the woman survived the fall. She woke up months later in a hospital, horrified to realize that her children were gone. They had been buried somewhere in that very cemetery. She spent days and nights searching for them, but it was hopeless. In the end, she too ended her life, her spirit doomed to wander the cemetery forever, searching for her lost children. Mama-san's voice quivered as she spoke of the woman's pain, as the sun dipped lower in the sky, turning the sky from pink to deep red. She told me that the woman's spirit was still there, still wandering the cemetery, still looking for her children. She said the woman was known as the White Witch, though few knew her story. Her soul had never found peace, and it was said that you could hear her crying in the dark. As the light faded, Mama-san pointed down toward the cemetery. I didn't want to look, but she insisted. Slowly, I turned my gaze toward the darkness, where I saw a flicker of white. At first, it was a soft glow moving slowly among the crypts, and then I heard it, a faint, mournful cry, soft at first, then growing louder as if the woman was getting closer. The sound was heartbreaking, a wail of pure sorrow. I froze, fear gripped me, but Mama-san held my hand tightly. She whispered that we were far enough away that the White Witch wouldn't come to us, but it was why she warned me to never go down into the cemetery at night. It was a place where the living should never tread. The woman's spirit was still there, searching for her lost children, hoping one day to find peace. I never went down to that cemetery after that night. I couldn't shake the image of the White Witch, her mournful cries echoing in my mind. Mama-san's story stayed with me, haunting me long after I left Okinawa. I remember the sadness in her eyes as she told me about the woman's suffering, and I can't help but wonder if, even now, she still wanders those graves, still searching for her children. To this day, I've never forgotten my time in Okinawa or Mama-san's story. It shaped the way I view life, death, and the connections between them, and I can't help but wonder if the White Witch is still there, her cries lost in the wind, echoing through the silent graves.